Okay, so this one's called The Nature of Karma. And this is an interesting one because there are so many different perspectives on karma. You've got the religious perspective, you've got the cultural perspective, you've got the perspective of, the so-called new age movement. And, you've got beliefs in how the universe works, influencing this, like things like the law of attraction and all these different things where, we put it down to karma. Many people believe in karma. Many people believe that, karma is ruled by the cycles of the planets. And, none of them are wrong. None of them are right, particularly, everyone's got a unique perspective. And so I just want to share my perspective because it's probably one you haven't heard before. So with karma, what karma means to me is that I've drawn to myself an experience. That's all it means to me. And if it's something unexpected, well, not so much unexpected, but unwanted, undesirable, then I just view that as an unconscious. It's something unconscious. It's a reflection of something unconscious because I didn't deliberately or purposefully create that experience for myself. And therefore it's unconscious. And so for me, all you need to ask yourself is, what created this? What is this showing me? Because at a fundamental level, you can look at, well, from my perspective, you can look at the unconscious mind and the conscious mind as one is analog, one is digital, or you can look at it as the unconscious versus the conscious. But in truth, the conscious aspect of us is the illuminated unconscious. Because let's say if we look at all of space and time, if we look at space as the void from which all matter arises, but we look at space just as space before anything arose, then we can say that everything is space. And therefore consciousness arose from that space. So at the deepest level, you can also say that consciousness is unconsciousness that has been illuminated, that has had the light of awareness brought to it. So I exist as a sea of potential. I'm space. I have the potential for anything to arise from within me. That potential exists within me, but it is unknown until the light of awareness has been shone upon that part of myself. And the moment that there is light is the moment that a sun is birthed. And so that saying we all know so well, let there be light. It is in that moment, the birth of the light is the birth of a creation. It is the unconsciousness seeing itself. I am that. So, it'd be very easy to say that the unconscious and the conscious are polarized, and from one perspective they absolutely are, but from another perspective they are the same. They are the same. So again, it's a paradox, but it's more that space is everything originates from space. Everything is birthed into form. Everything that is seen is birthed from that space. But the key thing to hone in on here is that when we are perceiving that light, when we are perceiving the birth of whatever has arisen from within that space, it is that space observing itself. It's just that in this moment, this part of me is unknown, and now I can see it. I can see myself. And this holds a huge key to being able to live your life from the perspective of consciously and purposefully creating your life, is to understand that everything you're experiencing is you unfolding. So what does this mean in context of karma? Well, what this means is that you can look at your entire life from the perspective of seeing yourself unfolding through everything that's unfolding, through the people, through the objects, through the environment that you're seeing. The deepest truth is that you are seeing yourself. It's just you. You are unconscious, and in the moment you are becoming conscious, you are seeing yourself arise. I am that. I am that. And so when something arises in your environment and you observe it, you become consciously aware of it, then you are seeing something that you were previously unconscious of. You are becoming conscious of it, and it just is you arising. This is me. I am that. Yeah. So those are the zoomed out perspectives, really zoomed out. One of them is going back right to the very beginning. The birth of existence itself. One of those is the perspective of the collective of all that is, of all existence. And so now if you zoom into the microcosm of yourself as a human being, you say to yourself, okay, so what is the truth of what is known to me now, of what I am conscious of now? What is that? What is the truth? And when I say, what is the truth? I mean, what is my truth? Because remember, everything is valid. Every perspective is valid. Every individual perspective is valid, even when they contradict the perspectives of other people. And so there is no truth other than your own. There is no person who can validate it other than you. And your interpretation it's almost like the fulcrum of your existence, where your choices on what you decide your truth, the truth of your reality, means to you, that is what is creating your life. That is what's creating your life. And so from the perspective of you looking out of your own eyes, being aware that you are unconscious and you are also conscious, you are becoming conscious of what the unconscious part of you is capable of becoming. In each moment, it's unfolding. So you look at this and say, okay, this is what I believe. This is the truth of what I believe now. This is what my reality means to me now. And you can say, okay, you can look at different parts of it and say, I don't really like this. I don't like that. I have desires within me for this. I have desires within me for that. These are the roadblocks to me, to those becoming a reality based on what I believe about my environment right now. And you can take a snapshot and you can look at it. But there are certain things about it that you will be unconscious of why they are that way. And so then you look at your biology. So you look at the microcosm of you as the human being and you say, okay, my body and the cells within my body, the organs. I mean, my body is a giant ecosystem and it's made up of a whole bunch of, insanely diverse different cells all working symbiotically together as one, but that are all sovereign and are all just following their own nature, oblivious to helping me with whatever I want to be helped with. They're just following their own nature. And nonetheless, that biology has a huge impact on us. And we have a huge impact on it. Because, again, it always comes back to perspective, because it's what the environment means that determines the nature of the signals that those cells receive. The interpretation is made, the signal is sent to the body, and the biology changes. And so I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm lying in bed and I see a huge black spider crawling on the ceiling above me. Now, if I believed that spider was poisonous, if my perception of that spider was that it was poisonous, then the meaning and the belief that I hold that could be a poisonous spider, it's holding the meaning that if I were to be bitten by that spider, I could die. And so the meaning of that experience, I'm interpreting my environment, and my body receives the signals that there's a threat to our well-being. There's a threat to our capability and capacity to thrive. Excuse the rain if you can hear it. I actually love that. But it's all about perception. So that's the influence I have. But let's say I was lying in bed and a spider crawled on the ceiling, but I didn't believe that spider was a threat. I recognized the particular species of it, and I just knew that it couldn't harm me. Then no signals would be sent to my body. Now, the response of the body to those separate signals is radically different. The chemicals would change. If I thought that it was a threat, my body would have sent me impulses that I had to move, and probably quite quickly. And, God knows how many different types of chemicals and all these kinds of things, stress responses, all of these things. The only thing that determines the nature of that response from the biology is the perception. And you can define the perception as what my reality means to me now. In my reality right now, there isn't a spider on the ceiling. But in the moment that within my reality there is a spider on the ceiling, my interpretation of that new reality is the only thing that matters. the only thing that that's what the body responds to. And so, okay, so we know that our perspective, our perception, has a huge impact on our biology. Massive. But it goes even deeper than that, because what we also know now about the nature of our collective reality is that perception, that perspective that we have, our interpretation of our environment physically changes our genes. And, there's great scientists on the planet that's, written lots of books about this and done tons of experiments, and, Bruce Lipton being one of my favorites. And, I can hear him saying it now: perception changes genes, perception changes genes. And so when understanding that your perspective changes your genetics, it means that belief, your interpretation of your environment is it's everything. It's everything. It changes the nature of your genetics. And so if we just underline that now and say, oh, okay, so if I inherited my genetics from my parents, and they inherited theirs from their parents, and them from theirs, and theirs, and theirs, and I mean, who knows how long that goes on for, how many generations? Hundreds, thousands, who knows? All of that lineage passed down, all of the perceptions of each generation determining the biological makeup of the genetics of each one to come, getting passed down and passed down. This generation was afraid of poisonous spiders, so they passed those genetics on. And me in this life, if I see a spider on the ceiling, the nature of their perspective will absolutely be bound up in my genetics. I'll see the spider and I'll freak out for no apparent reason. If I had ancestors who, had an accident in the ocean, almost drowned. I could easily have a seemingly irrational fear of the ocean or swimming in this lifetime. I wouldn't understand why I was afraid of the ocean. It doesn't seem rational. Nonetheless, your biology is responding, terrified of the water, because of the genetic makeup of your ancestors, caused by their evolving perception and perspective of their reality and the environment that they lived in, their interpretation of their reality. It's absolutely everything. Meaning is all that matters. Meaning. And that's what interpretation is. It's what everything means. There's a spider on the ceiling. What does that mean? And if we are unconscious of that meaning, likely it's come from our ancestors. And so this leads me back onto the topic of karma. So what is karma? Is it God punishing you? Is it God punishing me because I was bad in another lifetime? Am I getting taught a lesson in this lifetime because of something I did in another lifetime? Am I being punished because of something that the generations that came before me did? And Of course, the answer is no. But here's the thing that can make it seem like we are receiving punishment for something that happened in another generation or in another lifetime. And that is because our interpretation of our environment, it includes things we feel guilty for. It includes things that we feel ashamed of. And so if you had a generation that came before you and they held immense shame about a family member, let's say it was a generation where having a child out of wedlock was a really shameful thing to do. And let's say that happened. All of a sudden, you've got someone in this lifetime who's having to deal with repressed guilt and shame because they've just had a child and they're feeling all this guilt and shame and they have no idea why. It's probably so normalized to them now that they don't even realize it's there. Nonetheless, it's still there because I've just had a child and now I'm feeling all this guilt and shame. So you see, karma, it's real in the sense that your lineage is carrying all this. Your genetics is holding all of the perceptions, assumptions that were made from the beginning of the birth of the very first person in your entire lineage, and who knows how many generations that is. And so there will always be things that arise that you could never have expected because you don't know what the interpretation of your ancestors' environment has infused into your DNA. You just don't know. You just don't know. But the myth I really want to bust, and again, you're welcome to your perspective, of course, this is my perspective. There are lots of people that say things like, they'll talk about astrology and say that karma is linked to astrology. Or they'll say that this is the end of a karmic cycle and I'm karma free. I'm going to be karma free at the end of the cycle. And it'll be something to do with the planets and all that kind of stuff. Now, I do want to stress that only a fool would look at the planetary system that we live in and the symbiotic nature of all the planets moving through the cosmos, all orbiting around the sun. I have a unique perspective on that as well, but that's not for this podcast. Only a fool would think that all of those energies, every one of those planets having a unique electromagnetic field, the sun having a unique radioactive frequency, and all of those planets interacting and changing and influencing each other's orbit. Only a fool would say that those movements are not impacting our own biology, our own electromagnetic fields. Only a fool would say that they're not influencing us. But they're influencing us in a way that is of nature. And what that means is that there may be, due to a planetary alignment, there may be the amplification of a specific frequency band, and that frequency band may be of a like vibration or resonance to a specific emotion, and so it's more drawn to the surface than it would be otherwise. But what it's doing is it's bringing it to the surface. But it's already there, you see. But the reality is that most of these things go unnoticed because human beings aren't really evolved enough to play out an inner story, or to allow a story to unfold in order to unearth these all the stuff that's in our DNA. It becomes quite natural after a while, but human beings are still conditioned to avoid negative thoughts and to avoid negative emotions, and anything that makes them feel uncomfortable, they prefer to suppress and deny, and stay comfortable. And I totally get it. Nonetheless, this is what happens with these planets. This is my belief, that the things that are there, they get drawn to the surface so that they'll be dealt with. Because we're part of a massive, I like to call it a super organism, like a giant hydra that's trillions of years old and has evolved to such a point, where it has biologically evolved to a point where every part of it, the way that it moves, its biological makeup, its atomic makeup, its radiation or its magnetization, it's all there serving the purpose of realizing higher and higher potential of what it can become. It's just evolving and evolving and evolving. And so if a human being is suppressing things that are within their DNA, old assumptions that have been made, outdated interpretations of an environment that is no longer in existence because of the new generations that have come through, that these movements of the planets, and they're lending us a hand in order that we continue to evolve, that we continue to realize higher and higher potential. And so there is no, lots of people, there'll be lots of people who are listening to this who meditate, for example. And, that's perfect. Meditation is great. But understand that it's not the meditation. Let's say you did a meditation to clear karma, for example. And from my observation, it's mainly people who are still scared of negative emotions that do these kinds of meditations all the time, or are always trying to end their own karma or clear their own karma to avoid some future negative event. It's not the meditation that's going to clear the karma. It's the fact that you're bringing your focus to something that is imbued with intention. It's imbued with meaning. If I listen to this, it means that I'm going to clear my karma. And so what you're expressing into the world is actually a desire to clear karma. And so that focus will draw anything to the surface. It'll, in the same way that the movement of a planet will. It's amplifying, it's giving energy to an intention, and therefore drawing it to the surface so that it can be brought into the light of consciousness. And ultimately, that's what we're doing here. That's what we're doing here. We're illuminating that which is unseen. And in another podcast, I shared that the deepest desire of the unconscious part of us is to be seen in the way that I've shared, and that everything that is unconscious is unseen. Everything that we are conscious of has been seen. And so it's actually that we're seeing ourselves unfold. I want to see myself I want to see higher and higher potential of what I am and what I can, therefore, can become. And that desire to be seen is very, very powerful, the nature of it. When I felt into it myself, I could feel the gravity of it. It's so intense. It's actually behind everything. It is the force, in my opinion, that feels like the force that is moving everything, absolutely everything, even the sun. That everything is serving that to be seen. You know, I'm unconscious. I am pure space. I'm a void. I exist as the potential to become anything, but I have not realized any of it until I am seen. I can see that I am this, I am that, I am that. I'm seeing myself unfold through the experience of a reality within which everything and everyone else seems separate, seems to not be a part of me. But you eventually get to a point where that no longer feels authentic. When you look someone else in their eyes, you don't see something that's, you don't see someone who is separate to you. You see yourself in their eyes. And, you know, that's a confusing part. That's a confusing moment in your life because you can recognize yourself in them. And so there's this familiarity that comes into the way you interact with people. And, you know, they can't quite pinpoint, you know, you can tell they're feeling comfortable and they're enjoying the fact that you're clearly so comfortable. And this is why, is it because they don't feel separate to you. They feel so familiar, like they are part of you. You know that when you're engaging with them, they are showing you a part of yourself. And, you know, in that, you know that any judgment that you cast upon them, or that you feel compelled to cast upon them, you know, this person is mean, or this person is jealous, or this person is spiteful, or this person is, you know, procrastinating, or this person is whatever. It could be anything. It's just mirroring parts of your own nature that are relevant for you in that moment to look at. There'll be parts of yourself that are unrecognized as being that. Any moment you find yourself wanting to express judgment, or, you know, blame another person for a feeling you're having, or it's always just a part of you being illuminated through that person. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be part of your environment. They wouldn't be part of your experience. So hopefully that sheds some light on, no pun intended, that sheds some light on karma. You know, you can't get rid of your karma because it's unconscious until you become aware of it. You don't know what's there until it arises. And you have to be prepared for it to rise at any time, at any moment. You know, is there a moment that you can clear all of your DNA of all of the misheld and no longer relevant perspectives, perceptions, beliefs, interpretations from your ancestors? Is it possible to completely clear all the obsolete perspectives that existed? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I know for sure I haven't. And, if knowing what I know and understand about nature, it wouldn't make any sense from the perspective of the purpose of nature wanting to realize higher and higher potential of what it can become. It wouldn't make any sense for that ever to be finished, because as long as there's an unconscious part of us, that means there's part of us that is yet to be seen. And so my personal perspective is to embrace it, invite in those stories, invite in those negative thoughts, invite in those weird things that are getting plonked into your imagination, and just, I came across a word recently, and it's been, when you find a word or something that you like and it's new, all of a sudden you see it everywhere. It's like when you buy a new car. You buy that car and you think, oh, this is quite a unique car, and then all of a sudden you're seeing them everywhere. I came across this word called noodling. I'm just going to go and noodle with this for a while. And I just love the energy of that word. It's like, it's a word for me that means purely following my curiosity, purely exploring for the sake of exploring. It's almost playful in nature, where I'm just noodling. And that's what I would recommend. You get a thought, noodle with it. Noodle with that thought, see what it turns into, see if it turns into inspiration, see if it becomes a vision. Just give it your unconditional presence and just allow it to unfold. That's my, whether it's positive or negative. Because if it is negative, you do have free will. You can set that negative thought aside, but the frequency of that thought will just keep coming and coming and coming, and it'll eventually get to a point where you go to bed at night and you're getting absolutely bombarded with it, and then you won't be able to sleep, and then you will, you'll be trying meditations, and the reality of the scenario is that your nature is trying to get you to give your unconditional presence to a thought until it runs out. Until it runs out, turns into a vision, turns into an inspiration, reveals a hidden truth, reveals a repressed desire, reveals a repressed emotion, reveals the truth of a trauma that you're now ready to accept the truth of, but you weren't able to when you were a child. All of them are relevant. You can trust your nature entirely. It's so highly evolved. You honestly have no clue what it's capable of. It is so profoundly evolved. And so just trust every thought, every impulse, and understand that the way that you navigate the world, the way that you wield your power in the world in order to live with purpose and with intent, being in the driver's seat, is through meaning. And the only way to create new meaning is to uncover the hidden meaning. If you've got an ancestor that was terrified of success, terrified of failure, terrified of humiliation, you're unaware of that, and you're trying to create success in your life, and you've got their unconscious perspectives and assumptions just working against everything that you're trying to achieve. And so the only solution is to go within, invite these things in. If you get a thought, stay with it. If you get a feeling, sink into it, explore it, interpret it. so that you give it the unconditional presence that it's craving, and ultimately you enable it to be seen. And that is the driving force behind everything. Okay, so that's the nature of karma. Okay, that'll do for now. I'll catch you soon. Cheers.